There's something quietly revealing about the people who never share their lives online. Not their photos, not their thoughts, not their updates. In a digital age where most people broadcast their breakfast, their breakups, and everything in between, some remain almost entirely absent. And that absence carries meaning, even if it's not always the meaning we assume. Behavioral psychology suggests that sharing on social media is fundamentally an act of self-disclosure. We reveal pieces of ourselves to create connection, to maintain relationships, to feel seen. But for some people, that equation doesn't add up the same way. The impulse to share isn't there, or if it is, it's outweighed by something else. Research on privacy regulation theory shows that people have different thresholds for how much of themselves they're willing to expose. Some feel comfortable being an open book. Others operate with much tighter boundaries. For people who rarely share anything online, it's often less about secrecy and more about a fundamental preference for keeping their inner world contained. They're not necessarily hiding. They're just not broadcasting. There's also a pattern linked to what psychologists call high self-monitoring versus low self-monitoring. High self-monitors are acutely aware of how they're being perceived. They adjust their behavior based on social cues. Low self-monitors are less concerned with external impressions. They do what feels authentic to them regardless of how it lands. People who don't share their lives online often fall into that second category. They're not performing for an audience because they're not thinking about an audience in the first place. But there's another dimension worth considering. Studies on attachment styles show that people with avoidant attachment tendencies often keep others at arm's length, emotionally and informationally. Sharing personal details, even casual ones, can feel like an uncomfortable level of vulnerability. For them, not posting isn't a statement. It's a reflex. They've learned, consciously or not, that distance feels safer than exposure. Some people also avoid sharing because they've developed what researchers call digital fatigue. They've watched how social media amplifies comparison, distorts reality, and rewards performance over authenticity. And they've chosen to opt out, not from a place of superiority, but from a recognition that the system doesn't serve them. They'd rather live their experiences than curate them. There's also a cognitive pattern tied to present moment focus. Research suggests that people who are highly engaged with the present tend to share less. They're not thinking about how a moment will look documented. They're just in it. The impulse to capture and share feels like a distraction from the actual experience, so they skip it entirely. But it's important to acknowledge that silence can sometimes signal struggle. Social withdrawal is associated with depression, anxiety, and loneliness. For some people, not sharing isn't a confident choice. It's a symptom of feeling disconnected, unworthy, or invisible. They're not opting out. They're fading out. And distinguishing between intentional privacy and isolation requires understanding the broader context of someone's emotional state. There's also a values component. Some people simply don't believe that their life needs to be documented or validated by others. They find meaning in private moments, in conversations that aren't recorded, in experiences that exist only in memory. For them, the act of sharing dilutes the experience rather than enhancing it. It's not about judgment. It's about preference. Research on identity construction shows that some people have a strong, stable sense of who they are that doesn't require external reinforcement. They don't need to announce their achievements, their relationships, or their milestones to feel good about them. Their self-concept is internally anchored. Sharing would feel redundant because they already know who they are. But there's also a practical element. Some people have jobs, families, or circumstances that make public sharing feel risky or inappropriate. They're protecting themselves, their privacy, or others. It's not about psychology. It's about pragmatism. What becomes clear is that the absence of sharing doesn't have a single meaning. It's not always confidence, it's not always fear, it's not always wisdom or detachment. It's a behavior shaped by personality, values, past experiences, and current circumstances. Some people who never share are deeply content, others are deeply struggling. Some are thoughtful, others are simply uninterested. The meaning isn't in the silence itself, it's in what drives it, and that varies widely. In a world that rewards visibility, choosing to remain unseen is a choice that says something, but what it says depends entirely on the person making it. If you're someone who doesn't share your life online, you're not disconnected. You're just connecting differently. And maybe that's the only truth that matters.